Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this Diablo 4 video, I want to talk to you about the Spiritborn. I made my very own Thorns build with the Spiritborn and I can't wait to talk to you about it today. Before we jump into the build and the exact setup, I want to go ahead and just let you know how the build is currently performing. Currently, I'm able to just absolutely destroy Torment 3. Torment 4 is a little bit slower, but it's still doable. I think with max rolls and everything on all of the gear that we're going to be covering here in the video, that it will be able to do Torment 4 just fine. So hopefully you'll enjoy this build guide video for the Spiritborn. Maybe learn something along the way. Who knows? Let's go ahead and talk about it right now. All right, I went ahead and jumped to the game here just to kind of show you off what some of the gameplay looks like. You can decide if it looks fun to you or not. But basically this build, you're going to have two active abilities that are really going to be a big source of damage other than your Thorns, and that is Payback, which has a very hefty cooldown, as well as our ultimate, the Hunter. Now this is really powerful because there's a passive node here over on your skill tree down towards the bottom that you have to have for this build. Intricacy, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, but what it is whenever you cast an ultimate skill, the last potency, defense, or focus skill that you cast will be reset and cast for free 3 times. So this is literally, it does exactly what it says. So if we were to cast Payback just on its own, you can see it has a 6-second cooldown. Now when I use the Hunter, it resets it. I can cast Payback 3 times, and then it's going to go on cooldown again. Now the Hunter passive, the reason we're choosing this is because you can spec into this that when you kill an enemy with the Hunter, it has a 40% chance to instantly reset the cooldown. That chance is halved after each consecutive reset. So what's going to happen here, sometimes you can cast this Hunter ability with that, what we just talked about, where it resets the cooldown. Sometimes you can cast the Hunter 3, 4, 5 times in a row. And if you're doing the math, that's up to 20 Payback casts in a row at the very top end there. That is pretty insane. And then you can see the Hunter has a cooldown itself of 30 seconds without just on its own. But we have a lot of cooldown reduction that we're going to talk about in the build that'll help kind of reduce that a little bit as well. Other than that, though, you're going to have a couple buffs that you're going to want to maintain, and it's really not that hard. The two most important is counterattack and armored hide. Counterattack will make it so that you basically dodge everything. And then when that's down, or if there's a little bit of gap in there, you have Armored Hide, which is going to increase your block chance. And also, Iron Hide is going to give you Thorns, you can see right here. So you're going to obviously want to maintain both of these buffs. It's pretty straightforward. You just got your green bar there. And then I have a bunch of stacks on my counterattack right now, just because my Gyro's testing something out. But you won't have that many stacks when you're actually running this build. The other ability we have here is Toxic Skin, and what this does just passively is whenever enemies attack you, they're then poisoned for over 5 seconds. Now you can spec into this further so that Toxic Skin will increase Thorns damage dealt to poisoned enemies, and that's just over here on the skill tree as well. It's this node right here. So we're obviously going to be dealing Thorns, and we're going to want to be poisoning enemies. And our other damage bucket that we're going to be using here is vulnerability damage. Talk a little bit more about that here in the video. The last ability here is your rock splitter, and this is just a filler ability. This is going to give you some cooldown reduction through the hectic aspect that we'll talk about, as well as give you Thorns. That's what the buff is doing there. So that's literally what the build looks like. You hit your Payback, make sure you have all your buffs, rock splitter, and you just go. We'll have gameplay playing during the video as well, so you can continue to see what the gameplay looks like actually out in the field instead of a target dummy. So that's the gameplay. I love it because you're just kind of bouncing around the room, dealing Thorns, applying poison. I don't know, I just find it super fun, smooth, and kind of relaxing to play as well. It's a pretty fun build. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the Spiritborn's Spirit Hall. The Spirit Hall and the Spiritborn, the very first one I believe is level 15 is when you can unlock this one, and I believe the second one's level 30, and it's through a quest line. You know, it's kind of like what you find on all the classes, but this one is the Spirit Hall. You have different choices. The ones we're going to go with is Gorilla for both. The first Spirit's going to give it so that whenever you cast a Gorilla skill, you deal Thorns damage to enemies that you hit. You also get a barrier, and it also in turn makes all your skills Gorilla. So literally every single skill that you use is going to deal Thorns damage. Now, the barrier is nice. There are ways to give you more damage based off barrier, but that's not a main focus of this build. Our second spirit over here is Gorilla as well, and this is so you can get maximum resolve stacks increased by 4. That's 8% more damage, and we're getting that from our Paragon glyph called Colossal. We'll talk more about Paragon glyphs a little bit later in the video as well. On top of that, whenever you have at least 2 stacks of resolve, you are unstoppable. Now, these are going to look probably a little bit different if you're not running this helmet right here. This is where we're getting these crazy numbers from. So that's why this unique helmet is really important. We'll talk about it a little bit later as well in the video, though. And the other thing I wanted to point out with the Spirit Hall is that Unstoppable is going to actually synergize up with one of your passive nodes in here. This one called Unrestrained Power. You gain increased damage while unhindered or unstoppable. Toxic Skin makes you unhindered for 7 seconds, so that's pretty much always going to be up. But in case if it's not, we have that Unstoppable from our Spirit Hall, and we have other sources of Unstoppable kind of baked into this build as well. So you're always going to be getting that damage bonus. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about which gear we should be using. We're going to cover legendaries, aspects, and affixes you should be chasing, as well as uniques. And there's going to be a couple different choices as well that you can make on your own. We'll talk about all of it here. Let's go ahead and talk about itemization. I like to use the website d4builds.gg. This is the planner I like to use. It's just what I've gotten used to for myself, and it's what you'll see when you check out the builder down below. So let's go ahead and break it down for you. The very first legendary you're going to want to run here is your gloves, and I always go for the Fell Soothsayer's aspect. This makes it so that you guarantee to always have everything vulnerable, so that we're benefiting from that vulnerable damage. On the gloves, you're going to want to go for maximum life and dexterity, of course. You can also go for armor. Now, there's other useful affixes on here that you could get. Now, Thorns cannot crit, so we would not want that. You could do lucky hit chance if you happen to find an Andariel's helmet. You could even go for ranks to core skills if you want for your payback, or vulnerable damage would be another choice. If it were me, I would go for vulnerable damage over armor once I can make sure I have my armor capped without having to have it on my gloves. But right now I'm struggling to get the resistances and armor caps for Torment 4, so that's why we've put armor onto the slots. And then for your tempers, you're going to want vulnerable damage. Now make sure you're getting the vulnerable damage from your Eagle Finesse. You can actually roll higher vulnerable damage from this. We cover that a little bit more in my Spiritborn overview video. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do after this video. You can also get a temporary here for your Armored Hide that gives you Thorns bonus. You can actually get more Thorns bonus from tempering this onto your gloves. Next up, we have our weapon. I go with the Bristleback aspect. We talked about this already. This allows it so that you deal Thorns damage whenever you dodge or block. You can actually see over here on the weapon, you can actually get that to roll even higher since it's on the weapon slot. And then over on your weapon for your affixes, you're going to want to use a polearm. This is going to give you vulnerable damage. You're also going to roll dexterity, max life, of course, as well as vulnerable damage. Now for your tempers, you're going to want to get a chance for payback to deal double damage. That's from your forced augment weapons. And then your second temper is going to be vulnerable damage. Again, make sure it's the Eagle Finesse vulnerable damage so that it can roll up to that 80%. Next up, we have your amulet. I always run the aspect of Bristling Vengeance. This is going to be what enables your payback ability to echo forward and deal a percentage of your Thorns damage to enemies. This one's really awesome because Thorns are usually just melee range, you know, when you get hit or whatever. But this, you're literally like throwing your Thorns at stuff. It's actually really fun. We also go with the Cookie Cutter Thorns aspect Needle Flare. This allows Thorns to deal damage around you and your minions. Now you can pick up the Rune word where you get the Spirit Wolf and have this work around your Spirit Wolf. I tried it out and I wasn't a big fan, but we'll talk more about Rune words here in a little bit. Ring number 2, I run Tormentor's aspect. This makes it so the enemies that are poisoned, whenever they move, they'll take Thorns damage per second. This one's really awesome. I love this. It's really strong. Now for our affixes on our rings, we are going to run. You can kind of see it's a little bit different here. You have a little bit of choices, but here's kind of how I have it set up. So I run max life and dexterity, of course, on both rings. And then you can also get vulnerable damage. You're probably seeing a trend by this point. Now over on your tempers, you're going to want vulnerable damage. Again, make sure it's the Eagle Finesse. And you can want that on both rings. Now you have choices here. You can do a couple extra charges for your counterattack if you want to. If you feel that that's necessary and you're not keeping 100% uptime on that buff, you could grab this on one ring or both. I have it on both rings. That's why I have so many stacks. But I wanted to show you another option here for your temper is cooldown reduction for the Hunter. That is the ultimate ability that is enabling our payback to be almost always spammed. So it's up to you on how you want to play this. You can do both cooldown reduction on both rings, or you could do counter, to split it up however you want, however you feel. This is just how I have it right now. Those are your legendaries. Let's go ahead and talk about your unique items. There's quite a bit in this build. The very first is your helmet. You're going to want to use Loyalist Mantle. I showed this a little bit ago where we were getting that Spirit Hall buff, which was really nice from this. And this is because we have our Spirit Hall choices matched. They're both Gorilla, so we're getting a lot of cooldown reduction, as well as that bonus there in the Spirit Hall, more potency in there, however they word it. But what's really nice about this is the cooldown for your Gorilla skills, which is payback. That's how we're getting the cooldown so low, and then stacking that up with the Hunter. It's just, you're almost always able to cast payback. It's really awesome. Over on our chest piece, of course, Razor Plate. It's a Thorns build. You probably would have guessed that. Now the pants. These pants are really awesome too. These are Protection of the Prime. And I actually kicked it into the gameplay here because I'm going to show you the ones I have. The Protection of the Prime pants give you a damage buff for 4 seconds after you dodge an attack. You're always dodging because you're always having counterattack up, so you're literally always going to have this damage buff. And now think, I've only masterworked it once, and it's a greater affix. Now imagine if I got all 3 hits on that damage buff. How crazy high this could go. You also get plus to defensive skills, which would benefit your iron armor. You're going to get damage reduction while standing still, max life. These pants are really, really great. Next up, we have Rakanos Wake. And these ones, you kind of have a couple different choices here when it comes to boots. Our goal here is to pick up the Yen's Blessing boots. And the reason for that is the resistance to all elements. Both these boots roll resistance to all elements. So you're going to want to find a pair, either or, when you're first starting out, either or, and this is just going to help you be able to cap your resistances a little bit easier. Now, if you find a way to cap your armor without these boots, you could throw on the Scorn of the Earth, and then that allows you to cast Soar. And then you can cast your Soar if you want to, and then be able to get your vulnerable from that, in turn freeing up the legendary aspect on your gloves. There's lots of choices. I feel like this build's got a little bit of fluctuation there. But the boots that we're going to be going for here that we're talking about in the video is Yen's Blessing. Again, this is all resistance. But what I like about this one is whenever you cast a skill, there's a chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown, and that can happen every 8 seconds. So that could potentially cast your payback for free while it's on cooldown. I just think it's pretty cool. The other one's the Rakanos Wake. This one, whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, you explode, dealing fire damage. I don't know. I feel like that unique effect's not that great. But those are the ones I'm using right now just because I can't get the masterwork to hit the resist all on my Yen's Blessing. So I know we've covered a little bit of choices, but I want to cover a few more options that you do have when it comes to your helmet. Now, if you feel like, nah, I don't need that much cooldown, or maybe you want to switch up and try out some of the other stuff, here's a few that I would recommend. I would recommend using the Loyalist Mantle, because it's not just the cooldown, but it's those Spirit Hall bonuses as well. I mean, you're basically doubling your Thorns through that Spirit Hall bonus. But a couple other options you have here. The first one is Bruiser. And this one's based off your missing HP, which you're going to always be at max health. So this one really wouldn't be that good. But you get increased armor and Thorns based off your missing health. The other one I tried out was Wild Bolt. This one is every 2 seconds, distant enemies are pulled into you and take increased damage. I wasn't very impressed. I like the Loyalist unique better, but hey, try it out if you want to, see if you like it or not. And then another one that's really nice for this build, because cooldown's a big thing, is Hectic. After you cast 5 basic skills, one of your active cooldowns is reduced by, you can get up to 2.5 seconds. This one's really, really good if you're struggling with that cooldown reduction. But your Loyalist helmet gives you like 50% CDR anyway, so that one I think just trumps it overall. That was all of your itemization, your legendary aspects, uniques, what affixes I think you should be going for. That was quite a lot. There's a little bit left here with the build guide video. Next up, I want to go ahead and talk about rune words real quick. The very first one that is required for this build is Seer Eom. And what this is going to do for you is whenever you cast a non-channeled skill 3 times in a row, so payback, because remember you can cast it 4 times in a row, but all you have to do is cast it 2 times and then you get a cooldown reduction. And so with your payback rotation that you have set up, you're going to be reducing your cooldown by 0.2 seconds, literally all the time. And this is not, it's not just payback. There's other skills that are going to benefit from this rune word as well. Now, the second rune word that I'm using currently is Neovex. What this does is whenever you deal damage after not taking any damage for 2 seconds, which you're dodging all the time through your counterattack, so this one procs pretty frequently. But then by doing that, you're going to get +3 to all skills for 7 seconds. This one you can mess around with and try other rune words if you want. Again, I tried the Spirit Wolf in here. Wasn't a big fan. This one's still kind of a slot that I kind of play around with different rune words, see what I like best. But that's what I'm currently using. Next up, let's go ahead and hit on the Paragon board. We're just going to cover the glyphs in this video. If you want the full exact route, I do have the build planner up. I'll have the link below in the description. You can copy it if you want or whatever. But I just want to talk about the glyphs here. The very first one is Revenge. This is going to give you a bonus to rare nodes in range, which we have set up here to be damage as well as damage to elites, which is really nice. But the big reason we use Revenge here is that whenever you deal Thorns damage to an enemy, it increases all damage the enemy takes up to 15%. I don't know why it says 14. It's supposed to be 15. And then the legendary perk there is increases more damage, basically, which that's pretty much all the legendary gems just give you more damage, it seems like. The next one we have is Hubris. This one is going to buff up your magic nodes, which is fine. I mean, we have damage, max resource, it's fine. But the big thing here is you gain up to 2,000 thorns based on your dodge bonus. You're going to always have 100% dodge bonus, so you're always getting the max amount of thorns from this. And then making it legendary increases your vulnerable damage. Rune number 3 is Colossal. I talked about this one a little bit earlier, I believe. This is going to give you more damage based off your stacks of resolve. Just that bonus alone is like 20% more damage pretty much all the time. Making it legendary is going to give you increased damage to close enemies, which is pretty good since we are doing a Thorns build. And then you can also give your guerrilla skills, which payback is what's benefiting from this, based off your strength nodes that you get in range. Glyph number 4 is Exploit, and this one is to give you more vulnerable damage. The additional bonus on here is not really that important because it makes one enemy vulnerable for 3 seconds, and it only happens every 20 seconds, which we don't need because we already have 100% uptime on our vulnerable perk there. And then you can also get more vulnerable damage from making it legendary. Glyph number 5. I go with Innate. What this is going to do is increase your incarnate skill damage. So your counterattack, and I guess the reason I didn't point this out at the beginning when we were going over gameplay is because, at least as far as I know, it's not that big of a thing. But when you do dodge, you retaliate for damage. So Innate is going to buff up that little bit of damage there. Again, I don't think it's super major, but we'll take what we can at this point. And I also like the additional bonus on this one of casting one of these incarnate skills will give you damage reduction for 7 seconds. Making it legendary increases your damage. Over on our actual legendary boards that we're choosing, the first one here is Sapping. And this is whenever you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills in a row, you're going to restore vigor and deal increased damage. The reason we grab this is because when we cast our payback at least 3 times in a row, we get a 30% damage buff. And this should be happening every 5 seconds, so almost 100% uptime on this node. Board number 4 is Spiny Skin. Of course, whenever you use a cooldown, you gain Thorns. This is always going to be up. You're running a Thorns build. It makes sense. Board number 3, I go into Bitter Medicine. I don't even spec into the node, though. The only reason I went with Bitter Medicine is because you have these damage nodes really close to each other. It's a really nice board for that. board number 4. I'm still working my way there. I don't have enough Paragon levels yet. But we go with Infighter. And this is whenever you dodge or block, which is going to be all the time, you get attack speed. And this stacks up to 9 times. It's always going to be up. We just got to get the Paragon points. I need to go spend more time in the pit leveling up the Paragon, I guess. And again, if you want the full route that I take, you can check out the build planner for that. Next, let's go ahead and talk about Mercenaries. I use Subo, I don't know how you say his name, something like that. The reason I use this dude is for Thrill Seeker down here, and this is going to give you more cooldown from their explosive charges. And then my reinforcement that I use is Variana, and I go with Bloodthirst just for attack speed for 7 seconds, basically. The attack speed is really nice for that Rock Splitter filler ability. Again, I think pretty minor on that, but worth touching on. And last but not least, part of our build here is our elixir. We use the Elixir of Iron Barbs. This gives us armor and thorns. Makes sense. I think you can figure out why we use that. For my incense, I use Sense of the Desert Afternoon. And this is to give us more thorns. I think it's pretty clear why we're using those. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look into the Spiritborn Thorns build that I am working on. So far, this is kind of where I have the build at that I'm pretty happy with. There's a few minor tweaks here and there, but maybe in the future, if we find something that's even crazier than what we talked about in this video, maybe we'll do a follow-up. But I think we're in a pretty good spot with the build right now. I'm having an absolute blast playing it. If you feel there's some way that this build could be even stronger, let us know down in the comments, and we'll see what we can work on to continue to improve the build. I've had so much fun theory crafting the Thorns Spiritborn build. It seriously has been a lot of fun. Probably the most fun I've had since the Desecrated Ground build I theory crafted last season. Check that one out. Hopefully we'll get that updated for Season 6. That may be my next project or video, whatever you want to call it. We'll have to see. But for now, I think I'm going to go back to the pit and just keep grinding and grinding until I hit Paragon 300. And that is the Spiritborn Thorns build that I theory crafted. In fact, I love theory crafting builds so much that I go out of my way to avoid looking up build guides so that I can discover things on my own and learn more about the class that way. And that's going to wrap it up for the Spiritborn Thorns build on Diablo 4. Hopefully you found this video useful and or entertaining. If so, don't forget that like button and subscribe to the channel if you think I've earned it. Please consider becoming a YouTube channel member today and unlock early access to videos when I put out big batches, some behind the scenes footage, as well as some fun bloopers that I find while I'm editing videos. And it also helps out the family a lot. But don't forget, your view alone means the absolute world. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.